At 34,000 feet, both pilots collapsed. The plane began to fall. Passengers screamed in fear. Then a quiet woman in seat C24 stood up. She spoke into the radio using a military call sign. 50 miles away, 2 fighter pilots heard her voice and froze in shock. That call sign was supposed to belong to someone who was dead. Before you watch the full story, comment below and tell us which country you are watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The Boeing 787 hummed steadily at cruising altitude. Outside the small window, clouds stretched endlessly like a white ocean. Inside seat C24, Elena Carter stared at her hands. They were shaking slightly. She had not been on a plane in years. Not since the accident, not since the day she lost her wings and her entire squadron. Elena was 36 years old. She had once been a combat pilot in the United States Air Force. Her call sign was Shadow 7. Almost everyone in the military aviation world knew that name. She had flown dangerous missions. She had saved lives. She had once been a hero. But that was before everything went wrong. 5 years earlier, during a night training exercise over Arizona, her flight computer failed. The system gave her false readings. She made choices based on incorrect data. In the darkness, 3 aircraft collided. 5 pilots were killed. Elena survived, but the blame fell on her. The military court said she failed to double-check her instruments. They said she acted recklessly. They said she ignored protocol. The media called her the pilot who killed her own team. Headlines shouted her name. Her face appeared everywhere. People sent hateful messages. Death threats came almost every day. Elena was dishonorably discharged. Her pilot license was permanently taken away. She lost everything she had worked for since she was 18. Flying had not just been her job, it was who she was. It was her identity. It was her soul. And it was taken from her. After her discharge, Elena disappeared. She moved to a small town in Montana. She changed her phone number. She avoided anyone who knew her past. She found work as a warehouse manager. She lived alone in a small apartment. She never talked about flying. She didn't even look at the sky anymore. But today, she had no choice. She was flying to Arlington City for a mandatory hearing. The families of the pilots who died were suing her in civil court. Her lawyer told her she had to be there. So now she sat in seat C24, trying not to panic. Whitaker A. flight attendant walked by with a drink cart. "Would you like something to drink?" "Just water, please," Elena said quietly. The attendant handed her a plastic cup. As Elena reached for it, the woman noticed the scars on her forearm. Burn scars, the kind left from ejecting out of a burning aircraft. "Are you okay, ma'am?" the attendant asked softly. "I'm fine, thank you," Elena replied. But she wasn't fine. Her heart was racing. Every small vibration of the plane made her tense. Every sound reminded her of alarms and explosions. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe slowly. In the cockpit, Captain Michael Harrington checked his instruments. Everything looked normal. The weather was clear. The flight from Salt Lake City to Arlington City was smooth. His co-pilot, First Officer Lily Zhao, reviewed their approach checklist. "We should land in about 2 hours," she said. Michael nodded. He was 56 years old and had flown commercial planes for 30 years. He had more than 18,000 flight hours without a single accident. Today was supposed to be routine. Then suddenly, something went wrong. Michael felt dizzy. The cockpit spun around him, his vision blurred. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. His hands went numb. Lily looked at him. "Captain Harrington?" Michael slumped forward, his head dropping to his chest. He was unconscious. Lily grabbed his shoulder and shook him. No response. She pressed the emergency button. "This is First Officer Zhao. Captain Harrington has lost consciousness. I need medical assistance in the cockpit immediately." She tried to control the plane alone, but something was wrong with her, too. Her head began to pound. Her hands felt weak. The instruments blurred in front of her eyes. "I don't feel well," she whispered. Then she collapsed. In the cabin, passengers heard the emergency alarm. A flight attendant ran to the cockpit and opened the door. She stopped in shock. Both pilots were unconscious. The plane was still flying on autopilot, but autopilot could not land the aircraft. Autopilot wasn't designed to handle real emergencies. The head flight attendant grabbed the intercom, her hands shaking. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency. We need to know right now if anyone on board has flight experience. Anyone who knows how to fly an airplane, please identify yourself." Silence followed. Passengers looked at one another with fear in their eyes. A few people began to cry. A man in the back shouted, "What do you mean? Where are the pilots?" "Please remain calm," the attendant said, though panic could be heard in her own voice. "We need someone with aviation experience. Anyone, please." From seat 17D, Elena heard every word. Her body went cold. She understood exactly what this meant. She knew what was coming. Without pilots, the plane would eventually run out of fuel, or the autopilot would shut off, and then everyone would die. She looked around the cabin, parents holding their children, elderly couples gripping each other's hands, young people with their entire futures ahead of them. 187 passengers, 187 lives. Elena squeezed the armrests until her knuckles turned white. Every instinct told her to stay quiet. She had sworn she would never fly again. She had promised herself she would never again be responsible for lives in the air. She couldn't do it. She couldn't risk failing again. She couldn't risk killing more people. Then she heard a small voice behind her. "Mommy, are we going to crash?" "No, sweetheart. Everything will be okay." "But the lady said the pilots are sick. Who's going to fly the plane?" Elena closed her eyes. She saw their faces. The 5 pilots who died 5 years earlier. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, Captain Maria Delgado, Major Samuel Ariemi, Captain Aiko Tanaka, First Lieutenant Andrew Kim. She remembered their voices over the radio that night. The confusion, the panic, the screaming before the collision. She had carried that guilt every day for 5 years. Night after night, she woke up from nightmares, screaming. She saw their faces everywhere she went. Their families blamed her. The military blamed her. And she blamed herself. But deep down, in a place she tried hard to ignore, Elena knew the truth. The investigation had been rushed. The flight computer data had been damaged. No one had properly studied the evidence. They needed someone to blame, and she was the easiest choice, the only survivor. "Is anyone here a pilot?" The flight attendant called out again, her voice breaking. "Please, we're begging you. We need help." Elena stood up. Her legs trembled. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Slowly, she walked toward the front of the cabin. The attendant saw her. "Ma'am, please return to your seat." "I'm a pilot," Elena said quietly. "What?" "I'm a pilot. I can fly this plane." The attendant stared at her. Is this some kind of joke? "I flew combat missions for 14 years. I can fly a Boeing 787. "Oh, thank God." The attendant grabbed her arm. "Come with me. Hurry." They rushed into the cockpit. Elena took one look and understood. Both pilots were unconscious, but still breathing. Their skin was pale. It looked like poisoning or a sudden medical event, possibly carbon monoxide, though the cabin pressure seemed normal. She checked the instruments. Altitude, 34,000 feet. Speed, 475 knots. Autopilot, engaged. Fuel, about 75 minutes remaining. Heading, east toward Arlington City. Her hands moved on their own. Even after years away from flying, the training remained. Muscle memory. She checked navigation, communications, engine systems. Everything worked, except the 2 pilots. She pressed the radio button. "This is Shadow 7, requesting immediate emergency assistance. I am a passenger with military flight experience. Both pilots are unconscious. I have taken control of the aircraft and request guidance." 50 miles away, 2 F-22 Raptor fighter jets were on routine patrol. Captain Tyler Grant was leading. His wingman was Lieutenant Isabel Moreno. They were escorting a military transport plane as part of standard procedure. Grant heard the transmission. The voice was female, steady but tight with tension. But it was the call sign that froze his blood. "Shadow 7, he whispered. "Sir?" Vasquez said. "Did she just say Shadow 7? Grant's grip tightened on the controls. "Confirm that transmission. Verify the call sign." The radio crackled again. "This is Shadow 7 on commercial flight United 782, Boeing 787 cruising at 34,000 feet. Both pilots incapacitated. I am declaring an emergency and requesting immediate assistance. Over." Grant couldn't believe it. Shadow 7. That call sign was known by everyone in military aviation. It was legendary and infamous. Shadow 7 was the pilot from the Arizona incident, the one blamed for the deaths of 5 pilots, the one who had been dishonorably discharged. Shadow 7. "This is Raptor Lead," Grant said carefully over the radio. "Confirm your identity. What is your name?" There was a short pause. "Elena Carter, former captain, United States Air Force. I know I'm not authorized to use a military call sign anymore, but there are 203 people on this plane who need help right now. Can you assist us or not?" Grant didn't hesitate. "Shadow 7, we are heading to your position. Stand by for instructions. Raptor 2, form up on me. We are escorting United 782. "Copy that, Raptor Lead," Vasquez replied. The 2 F-22s changed course and accelerated toward the airliner. Within minutes, they were flying on either side of the Boeing 787, visible through Grant's canopy. He could see the massive aircraft holding steady in the air, but he knew the situation inside was critical. "Shadow 7, this is Raptor Lead. We have visual contact. You're flying straight and level. Good work. What's your status?" Elena answered. "Both pilots are unconscious, possibly from carbon monoxide or another medical issue. Autopilot is engaged. Fuel will last about 90 minutes. I need guidance for an emergency landing. I've never flown a commercial aircraft before. My experience is with F-16s and training jets." Grant felt a chill run through him. An F-16 and a Boeing 787 were nothing alike. Different controls, different handling, different systems. But at least she was a pilot. That alone mattered. "Understood, Shadow 7. Stand by. We're contacting ground control." Grant switched frequencies. "Ground control, this is Raptor Lead. We have an emergency. Commercial Flight United 782. Both pilots incapacitated. A passenger with military flight experience has taken control. Former Air Force, call sign Shadow 7. We need immediate landing clearance and full emergency support." The reply came instantly. "Raptor Lead, did you say Shadow 7, as in Elena Carter from the Arizona incident?" "Affirmative. Copy. Stand by." 30 seconds later, another voice joined the channel, older, firm, and commanding. "Shadow 7, this is Colonel Thomas Whitaker, Air Traffic Command. We are going to help you land this aircraft safely. First, tell me your flight experience." Elena took a breath. "I flew F-16s for 10 years, around 2,000 flight hours in military aircraft. I completed advanced emergency and combat training, but I haven't flown in 5 years, and I've never landed a commercial plane this large." "Understood. You know the fundamentals. That's enough. We'll guide you step by step." "Do you understand the controls in front of you?" Elena looked around the cockpit. "Yes, sir. Throttle, rudder pedals, instrument panel. Autopilot is active. Navigation shows heading east at 32,000 feet. "Good. Keep autopilot engaged for now. We're locating an emergency landing site. Your fuel gives you roughly 90 minutes, correct?" "Yes, sir." We're routing you to Redstone Air Base in New Mexico. It has the longest runway and full emergency services. You're currently over western Montana. We'll guide you southwest. Estimated time to Edwards is 45 minutes. Can you hold altitude and speed? Yes, sir. Excellent. Raptor lead will escort you. Follow his instructions. Additional support aircraft are on the way. You're not alone, Shadow 7. We're bringing you home. Elena swallowed hard. Bringing you home. Those words struck deeper than she expected. For 5 years, she hadn't felt like she belonged anywhere. She had been hiding, running, drowning in shame. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. Grant's voice returned. "Shadow 7, this is Raptor Lead. We're turning to heading 240 toward Edwards. When ready, disengage autopilot and begin a manual turn. Do you understand?" Elena placed her hands near the controls. This was the moment when 203 lives depended on her, just like 5 lives had 5 years ago. "Shadow 7, do you copy?" Grant asked. "I copy," Elena said. "Disengaging autopilot now." She pressed the button. The autopilot released. The control yoke came alive in her hands. She felt the weight of the aircraft, the resistance of the air, and the raw power of the engines surge through the frame. For the first time in 5 years, she was flying again. "Begin your turn now," Grant instructed. "Gentle left turn, heading 240. Elena slowly pulled the yoke. The massive aircraft responded smoothly. Its nose drifted left, the horizon tilting slightly. She adjusted the rudder to keep the turn steady and coordinated. Years of training returned like instinct. "Good turn, Shadow 7, Grant said. "You're doing great. Level out on heading 240. Elena straightened the controls. The aircraft leveled. They were now flying southwest toward Redstone Air Base, toward safety for everyone behind her in the cabin. The passengers had no idea what was happening in the cockpit. They only saw the fighter jets outside their windows. Some people took photos. Others whispered prayers. A few cried quietly. Most simply sat in silence, waiting and hoping. A flight attendant appeared at the cockpit door. "Is everything okay?" Elena kept her eyes on the instruments. "We're under military escort. We're heading to an emergency landing site. Tell the passengers to stay calm. We're going to be fine." The attendant nodded and returned to the cabin, though her hands were trembling. She wasn't sure if fine was truly possible. She had seen the unconscious pilots. She had seen the fear in Elena's eyes earlier, but at least someone was flying the plane now. At least there was hope. Colonel Whitaker came back on the radio. "Shadow 7, our medical team has reviewed the pilot's condition. Based on their symptoms, it appears to be sudden hypoxia, possibly caused by a pressurization issue. Cabin pressure is normal now. They should regain consciousness within 20 to 30 minutes. Until then, you remain in command." "Understood," Elena replied. "I need to tell you something else," Whitaker continued, his tone shifting. "I was one of the investigators on the Arizona case 5 years ago." Elena's breath caught. Her grip tightened on the controls. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "But that investigation was flawed. I tried to have it reopened. There were problems with the data. The flight computer log showed irregularities that were never fully reviewed. By the time I gathered everything, you had already been discharged and disappeared. I've been trying to contact you for 3 years. Elena couldn't speak. Her thoughts raced. "The truth is," Whitaker said gently, "that accident was not your fault. The equipment failed. You made decisions based on bad data. No pilot could have prevented it. I have the evidence, the reports. And when you land today, I will make sure your name is cleared." "You deserve that. You always did." Tears filled Elena's eyes. For 5 years of guilt, shame, nightmares, and pain. For 5 years of carrying blame that never belonged to her. For believing she was a killer. "Shadow 7, do you copy?" Whitaker asked. Elena wiped her eyes. "I copy, sir. Thank you." "You're about to save 203 people. Whitaker said. "That's who you really are. That's the pilot I remember. Now let's bring this plane home." Grant's voice returned. "Shadow 7, we're 30 minutes from Edwards. The runway is being cleared. Fire crews and medical teams are standing by. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," Elena said, and for the first time in 5 years, she truly meant it. Over the next 30 minutes, Elena stayed intensely focused. She monitored every gauge, made small adjustments to heading and altitude, and kept constant communication with Grant and Whitaker. The F-22 stayed perfectly positioned beside her, guiding and protecting the aircraft. Then Captain Harrington began to move. His eyes slowly opened. He looked around, confused. What happened?" "Captain," Elena said calmly, "you lost consciousness. I'm a passenger with flight experience. I've been flying the plane. We're approaching Redstone Air Base for an emergency landing." Harrington tried to sit up. "Who are you?" "My name is Elena Carter, former Air Force pilot." He stared at her. Then recognition spread across his face. "Shadow 7? You're Shadow 7? "Yes." He looked at the instruments. The plane was steady. The fighter jets were visible outside. Everything was under control. He leaned back in his seat. "Thank God you were on this flight." "How do you feel?" Elena asked. "Dizzy, weak, but awake?" He glanced at the co-pilot. Lily Zhao was beginning to stir as well. "What happened to us?" "Possible hypoxia," Elena said. "Medical teams will examine you after we land. Can you help me with the landing procedures?" Harrington nodded slowly. "Yes, I'll guide you, but you keep your hands on the controls. You're doing very well." A wave of relief washed over Elena. Having an experienced commercial pilot beside her would make the landing much easier. "Shadow 7, this is ground control," the radio said. "You are 20 miles from Edwards. Begin descent to 15,000 feet. Reduce speed to 250 knots." "Copy that. Beginning descent." Elena eased back on the throttle. The engines grew quieter. She gently pushed the yoke forward. The nose dipped and the altimeter started to fall. Harrington guided her calmly. "Good. Keep it steady. Watch your rate. About 1,000 feet per minute." Understood. The ground slowly became clearer. Desert, mountains. Then the wide, flat stretch of Redstone Air Base appeared ahead. The runway was enormous, longer than any she had ever seen. Emergency vehicles lined both sides, their red lights flashing. "Shadow 7, you are cleared to land on runway 16, ground control said. "Wind is calm. Visibility is excellent. 10 miles to touchdown. Lower your landing gear." Elena looked at Harrington. He pointed to the lever. She pulled it down. The aircraft vibrated as the gear extended into place. 3 green lights lit up. "Gear down and locked," Elena reported. "Good. Now set flaps for landing," Harrington said. She moved the flap lever. The wings adjusted, creating more lift and drag. The plane slowed again. "Flaps set for landing," she confirmed. "You're doing perfect," Grant said from his F-22. 5 miles to touchdown. You've got this, Shadow 7. Elena lined up with the runway. It looked like a long gray ribbon across the desert. Fire trucks, ambulances, hundreds of people watching, all relying on her. But she wasn't alone this time. She had guidance. She had support. She had people who believed in her. 2 miles, Whitaker said. Reduce speed to 180 knots. Begin final approach. Elena adjusted the throttle. The plane descended smoothly. 1 mile. Half a mile. "Looking good," Harrington said. "Ease back as you touch down. Rear wheels first." Elena focused completely. Her hands were steady. Her thoughts were clear. Every lesson, every hour of training, every mission she had ever flown came together in this moment. 100 feet, 50, 20. She gently pulled back. The nose lifted slightly. The rear wheels touched the runway softly. Almost no impact. Perfect. The nose wheel lowered. Elena applied the brakes and reverse thrust. The aircraft slowed quickly and smoothly. Shadow 7. "You're down," Whitaker said, his voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home." The plane rolled to a stop. Emergency vehicles surrounded it at once. Medical teams rushed inside to help the pilots and check the passengers. Everyone was safe. Everyone was alive. Elena sat in the captain's seat, hands still on the yoke, her body trembling as the tension finally released. She had done it. She hadn't failed. Harrington placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're a hero. You just saved all of us." Elena couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. The cockpit door opened. Colonel Whitaker stepped in, a tall man in his 60s, gray hair, kind eyes. He looked at her with deep respect. "Captain Carter," he said formally, "on behalf of the United States Air Force and everyone on this aircraft, thank you." Elena stood on unsteady legs and tried to salute, but he stopped her and pulled her into a brief hug. "You never stopped being a pilot," he said quietly, "and you never stopped being a hero. Welcome home, Shadow 7. 1 week later, Elena stood in a conference room at the Pentagon. The families of the 5 pilots from the Arizona incident were there. Military leaders, investigators, and journalists filled the room. Colonel Whitaker presented his findings. The flight computer had malfunctioned. Navigation data had been corrupted. The collision avoidance system had failed. Elena had made the correct decisions based on faulty information. The accident was not pilot error. It was equipment failure. The military had rushed the investigation. They needed someone to blame, and they had destroyed the career of an innocent pilot. The official report was released to the public. Elena Carter was fully cleared. Her discharge was overturned, her rank restored, her record wiped clean. The families apologized. They admitted they had blamed her out of grief and pain. But she was never responsible. And the same media that once ruined her name now worked to rebuild it. But Elena no longer cared about headlines or public opinion. What mattered to her was the truth. And at last, the truth was known. The Air Force offered to restore her rank and honors. She could return to active duty. She could fly again. Elena thought about the offer for a long time. Then she made her choice. She accepted, but not as a combat pilot. Instead, she requested a position as a flight instructor. She wanted to train the next generation. She wanted to pass on what she had learned. She wanted to honor the 5 pilots who had died by helping future pilots become better trained, better prepared, and safer in the skies. Her request was approved. 6 months later, Elena stood on the runway at Redstone Air Base. She was wearing her flight suit again. The patch on her shoulder read, "Instructor, Shadow 7." A group of young cadets stood in front of her, faces full of excitement and determination. "Good morning, cadets," Elena said. "My name is Captain Elena Carter. Call sign Shadow 7. I'm here to teach you how to fly. But more than that, I'm here to teach you how to face fear, how to survive failure, how to make decisions under pressure, and how to keep going even when the world tells you you're finished." The cadets listened closely. "Flying isn't just about technical skill," she continued. "It's about courage. It's about integrity. It's about standing up when everything inside you wants to give up. 5 years ago, I was told I had made a terrible mistake. I believed it. I let that belief define me. But one day, at 32,000 feet, I was given another chance, and I took it." She looked across their faces. "Every one of you will have moments of doubt, moments of failure, moments when others judge you. When that happens, remember this. You are not defined by your worst day. You are defined by what you do after it." She paused. "Now let's get to work." The cadets followed her toward the flight line. High above them, an F-22 cut across the clear blue sky. And for the first time in 5 years, Elena looked up at a fighter jet and smiled. She was home. 3 months into her new role, Eleanor received an unexpected request. Captain Tyler Grant, the F-22 pilot who had escorted her during the emergency, asked to meet with her. They met in a quiet office on base. Grant stood straight and saluted. Elena returned the salute. "At ease, Captain," she said. "What can I do for you?" Grant relaxed slightly, though his face remained serious. "Ma'am, I came to apologize. When I first heard your call sign that day, I hesitated. I doubted you. I knew your history. I believed what people said. And I'm ashamed that I let that influence me, even for a moment." Elena studied him calmly. "But you helped me. You guided me through the landing. You stayed with me the whole time." "Yes," he said, "but I should have trusted you immediately. You were a pilot in trouble. That should have been enough. I let rumors and media stories affect my judgment. That was wrong." Elena was silent for a moment. Then she smiled softly. "Captain Grant, what matters is what you did when it counted, not your first thought, your final action. You helped save 203 people. I will always be thankful for that." Grant nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. There's one more thing." He hesitated. "My younger sister wants to become a pilot. She's applying to the Air Force Academy next year. She followed your story, everything you went through, how you came back. You inspired her. She asked me to tell you that you're her hero." Elena felt emotion tighten her throat. "What's her name?" "Chloe Grant. She's 17, top of her class. Brilliant." "When she's accepted," Elena said, "tell her to find me. I'd be honored to mentor her." Grant smiled. "I will. Thank you, ma'am." After he left, Eleanor remained in the office for a while. She thought about how far she had come, from shame and isolation to peace and purpose. She thought of the 5 pilots lost in Arizona. She thought of the 203 lives she had saved. She thought of the students she would train in the years ahead. Her story wasn't just about redemption. It was about endurance, about truth, about refusing to quit, even when the world turns against you. Elena stood and walked to the window. Outside, cadets ran drills across the runway. Above them stretched an endless blue sky, the same sky that had once felt like a prison, now her calling. She placed her hand against the glass and whispered 5 names. Daniel, Maria, Samuel, Aiko, Michael. This is for you. Everything I do from now on is for you. Then she turned and walked back toward the flight line where her students were waiting. There were planes to fly, lessons to teach, lives to shape. Shadow 7 was finally home, and this time she was never leaving.